Hey, City Center Baptist Church family, it's Pastor Brad coming to you from DDQ headquarters. Digging deeper question number 5 this week asks, how do the events of Esther 5-7, the first dinner, the humiliation of Haman, the second dinner, and the ultimate downfall of Haman, illustrate the relationship between divine sovereignty and human responsibility? Scholars have long wrestled with the relationship between divine sovereignty, that God has absolute control over his creation, and human responsibility, that people have wills and are held responsible for their choices. Are these two options mutually exclusive? Are they impossible to reconcile? To overemphasize in the direction of God's sovereignty makes God responsible for sin and turns humanity into automatons. However, to err the other direction turns God into a reactionary who is making decisions on the fly depending on what humans choose to do. Humanity, then, ends up being more in control. Both extremes must be abandoned, especially in light of the Bible's teaching. Various metaphors have been proposed to explain divine sovereignty and human responsibility. Today I'm going to suggest the analogy of an intricate dance between two parties, and I believe it is beautifully illustrated in Esther 5-7. Mordecai challenged Esther to enter unbidden into the king's presence to plead for the lives of the Jewish people. They were being targeted with annihilation by a wicked man named Haman. In a heroic act of self-sacrifice, Esther agreed to go. The king welcomed her, and she requested he and Haman attend a feast later that day which she had prepared for them. Following the feast, the king asked what her request was. He seemed to sense that there was something else on her mind. However, Esther delayed by asking the king and Haman to attend a second feast the next day. Why the delay? Was Esther being coy? Was she trying to work up her courage? Was she trying to buy more time? The text gives us no direct clues. So what's going on? One interesting background feature of the book of Esther is that the Lord is never mentioned directly by name. However, I believe he was covertly at work throughout the book. And you see it as the story unfolds at this point. Esther chose to delay one day. The king agreed, and he and Haman planned to attend. But within 24 hours, the whole story twisted and turned. Haman was flattered by the fact Esther included him. He flaunted himself to his wife and friends, but he was livid with Mordecai, who refused to grovel before him. His wife and friends suggested he make a high gallows and petition the king to hang Mordecai on it. Haman thought it was a brilliant idea and had it built. He went to bed looking forward to rising early to approach the king. But that very night, the king was sleepless. He told his servants to read to him from the record books, hoping it would put him to sleep. He heard that Mordecai had once saved his life from an assassination plot and discovered nothing had been done to honor him. At that very moment, Haman showed up. The king asked Haman what should be done to honor someone the king delighted in. Haman thought to himself that the king wanted to honor him, so he came up with an elaborate public display. The king loved the suggestion and commanded Haman to do exactly as he proposed to Mordecai. Can you imagine the absolute shock and dismay on Haman's face? His downfall had started. He carried out the king's command to honor Mordecai and then retreated in shame to his home. His wife and friends predicted his imminent demise. He was whisked away to Esther's second feast without any time to regroup. At that feast, she petitioned the king for her life and the lives of her people. She exposed the evil plot of Haman, whose doom was then sealed. He wound up hung on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. The bitter irony was obvious. So how does this story illustrate the relationship between divine sovereignty and human responsibility? The human characters, Esther, Mordecai, the king, Haman, and others, all made choices. But God sovereignly superintended the events to accomplish his purposes and ultimately saved his people. It is an intricate dance in which God led and the people responded, and it's breathtakingly beautiful. And so, in these strange and dangerous days in which we are living, we need to rest in the sovereignty of God, who will accomplish his good plans for his people in spite of all the evil in the world. Hope in him, follow him, trust him, and prayerfully and carefully choose your way. God will see you through. Dance to his lead, and it will turn out in the end to be beautiful. This has been Pastor Brad coming to you from DDQ headquarters.